My name is Gabi Cortez, and my group created a presentation through the medium of a website to look at how the idea of race has impacted the field of psychology and how it's evolved from its start to where we are today. Psychology in general is still a relatively new scientific field. Some of the individuals who spearheaded its origin are Wilhelm Wundt, William James, and one very well-known Freud. William Wundt and William James are said to be the founders of the field. Race has become an inherently important part of psychology and counseling because of the importance of understanding various cultures in regard to certain therapy practices. As you know, psychology is a relatively new field that originally stemmed from a branch of philosophy that relied on observation and logic with the help of the scientific method and pure curiosity. Again, Wilhelm Wundt and William James are credited with founding the field of psychology, but some other influential individuals have greatly contributed to its progress. Wilhelm Wundt is known as the first psychologist who studied structuralism. William James was a psychologist who studied functionalism. Freud was a deep thinker, psychologist, and philosopher who studied and heavily theorized about the afflictions of the unconscious mind. Max Wertheimer was a psychologist who utilized the Gestalt theory. Finally, Kurt Kafka and Wolfgang Kohler were psychologists interested in sensory and perception. As you can see from the percentage breakdown of racial demographics, individuals who have pursued careers in psychology are predominantly white, with a staggering 83%, with only a small percentage of Hispanic or Latino to follow, with even lower numbers after that. Another important factor to note is that white people have an easier time accessing mental health care services, even though research shows that those from ethnic or minority backgrounds are actually those who need it most. Again, looking at percentages, knowing that those in minority groups generally need mental health services more because of a higher prevalence of disorders, it's sad to see that only a fraction of those groups are able to receive care in some way. Before we look onto race in regard to culture and the bias associated with it, let's look at some vocabulary that may be new. Ethnocentrism is the term for when an individual sees themselves and the group they identify with as, quote-unquote, the top, with all others placed below them in some way. Alpha bias is the idea that there are gross differences between people of different cultures. This can lead to the development of skewed ideas or false stereotypes. Lastly, beta bias is the event where true differences between cultures are discounted or disregarded completely, also possibly leading to stereotypes. Recognizing race and culture is a very important part of successfully implementing counseling practices in psychology. However, cultural bias is very commonly taken with this and is wrongly generalized to different cultures. Sometimes when studies are conducted to try and gain insight into some new phenomenon, the results are said to be generalizable to other cultures, thus increasing the experiment's external validity. However, when the proper steps are not taken to ensure that all said generalizable cultures are included in the research, the information and results become invalid. Because the field of psychology is so predominantly white, the field is incredibly ethnocentric, shedding less light on already underrepresented cultures and races. Another important factor in the race disparity is insurance. Most mental health services are very expensive, like most medical services. However, some insurances do not cover mental health care, and on top of that, the minority groups like Latinos, Blacks, and Asians are the three of the minority groups that have the lowest rates of having health insurance, making it that much harder for them to receive care. Thankfully, in recent years, the fight for racial equality has become a bigger issue that people are striving to create change in. Universities offer psychology programs, and some of those, like Auburn, Loyola, and Emory, to name a few, are implementing a program called SCOPE. This program helps students of color learn more about psychology careers and the steps it takes to get there. It's important for more schools and universities to create these types of programs so that minority groups can gain more knowledge about the field and make that much more attainable to underrepresented groups. Our hope, as a group of undergraduate psychology students here at Baylor, is that in the near future we see more and more universities and schools providing information about psychology and try to increase the number of minority individuals who have careers in the field. One way we might be able to do this is to try and implement it in schools, going from elementary all the way to students in graduate school. Starting in elementary and middle schools, it might prove helpful to have regular counselor check-ins with children to build trust with the student and give them early access to possibilities in the field. Since most children are only exposed to psychologists at this age due to a negative or traumatic event in their lives, having this regular check-in would reduce the negative connotation, quote-unquote, psychologist has to children, breaking that cycle early in life. With regard to high school, with exception to a small percentage of schools, most students will not have any classes related to psychology during their time before graduation. Most students who begin studying psychology end up being introduced to the subject in an introductory course in college, assuming they even go to college. Having psychology class built into high school curriculums would be incredibly helpful in inspiring students to pursue different fields and just obtain basic information that at a surface level can help them interact with others better. For students in college, thinking about graduate school is daunting, even for someone who's prepared. An easy fix for this problem is by providing all students with resources on how to go about applying to graduate school from the moment they have an inkling to desire to go. Most of the students that struggle with this are students of first-generation families. Baylor does a great job of combating this with their First in Line program. This program provides all first-gen students with an advisor that helps them throughout their college journey by making sure that these students know everything that they need in order to accomplish their career aspirations. If all universities implemented a program like this, most of these problems would be mostly, if not completely, eradicated. While all of these proposals mainly focus on exposing students to psychology, licensed adults in the field, and making sure that students have the resources needed to be successful in this field, it is for a reason. Fixing a problem as large as diversity in the psychological field truly is dependent on the small things. Making sure that children of different races have positive experiences will cause them not to have negative biases about psychology, which could leave them wanting to pursue a career in our field.